Well, the St. Louis Cardinals pulled off a series win against the Arizona Diamondbacks and now head to New York on a little bit of a better feeling, I guess, but it's been an up and down series. Some roster moves are happening. The offense is still struggling, pitching's up and down. We'll talk about all this with a special guest and more on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Well, welcome back to Dealing the Cards. It's myself, Sandy, and we've got a special guest this time that we really want to introduce you all to. His name is John Poston. Right? Poston, not Poston, right? Yep.
Yeah, right.
I knew you told me the correct one. I want to make sure I got it right. But John is actually one of the official new co-hosts of the Note News podcast that will be here soon. We've talked about how we're kind of expanding this podcast network out and wanted to do some blues content soon. And so we've been in talks with John for a little while about this, and we're really excited for him to jump on. And also, you'll probably see him on Dealing the Cards as well, just whenever that works out well. But John, excited to have you today. How'd you feel watching the game today?
Yeah, excited to be here. I felt good. Like I was telling y'all earlier, first inning had me nervous watching Gibson pitch himself into a jam, but it turned out pretty well. I'd say my biggest takeaway from the series as a whole is probably just, this formula can work. Like for 2 out of the 3 games, we saw, the pitching do what it was supposed to do. We saw the offense, come through and score more than 4, which has been their magic number. The top of the bullpen continues to shine with, JoJo Kittredge and Helsley, and then Goldie and Gorman starting to get right, hopefully. Arenado clutch, Nootbaar, Contreras hitting, and Lynn and Gibson doing what they're supposed to do. So, if they can just keep putting it all together, the offense can carry some momentum. I think it can work. They just haven't done it consistently enough.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Sandy, what's your biggest takeaway coming out of this Diamondback series? I feel like you've been up and down. I mean, if I asked anyone after yesterday, probably a little bit different. But
yeah, well, I mean, it's so weird. The Cardinals are creating the most emotional fans ever, but they seem to be the least emotional team ever. Like, what is momentum to the Cardinals? It doesn't matter at all. You get this awesome walk-off win, and then what do? You go out and lose 14-1, probably the most deflating loss in quite a while for this team. And there's been a lot of them in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And then, they turn it around today and they go out and in really a complete effort, beat the Diamondbacks 5-1. They take the series. And who cares about the -8 run differential this series? The Cardinals won 2 and they lost 1. And I guess that's what counts. So I guess my takeaway with this team is don't count them out. They're not going to let things get them down. It's a different team than last year. They're not snowballing. Last year's team rolls over today after getting absolutely stomped yesterday. And so it was really good to see them fight back. But again, it also is a team that seems to have trouble building momentum across games. That walk-off win from Gorman, that should get you going. It should not result in a 14-1 loss the next day. So weird team, weird season, but not the 2023 team, not the 2023 season.
Yeah, I'll say my biggest takeaway, and John, you already touched on this a little bit, is the formula works. And this is how you're going to win games with the Cardinals. And it's not flashy and it's not 95 win baseball, that's for sure. And I'm not even sometimes people are like, why do you settle for mediocrity with this? I'm not saying that you should be happy that they're going to be an 85 to 88 win team. But who knows, maybe the deadline, they could up their ceiling a little bit. But this is the reality of the team. And in today's game in baseball, especially with the expanded playoffs, 85 to 88 wins is definitely good enough to get you in the playoffs, or at least in the mix. So when you're looking at a team that's playing 500 baseball, when its best part of its team is playing like one of the worst units in all of baseball, it makes me feel pretty optimistic about their future, for at least for the season. The team pitching stats have gotten a little bit out of whack, especially when you give up 14 runs in a game. But I think they had the 10th ERA in all of baseball coming into the series. They were 8th in bullpen ERA and 15th in starter ERA. Again, Kyle Gibson's been mostly really, really good this year. He's got a 2.6 ERA outside of that. If you take away that first inning against the Marlins, which you can't really do, that's unfair, but it tells you hey, he's going to have a couple blowups here and there. So his ERA might be inflated, but for the most part, he's going to go out there and shove, which is actually kind of weird. You don't really think of how Gibson is shoving, but he's been going 6 or more innings, giving up 3 or less runs. That's a formula for winning baseball games. Yeah, I don't know what the number is now, but going into this series or going into last series, the Cardinals are 5-1 when they scored 4 or more runs. Again, if you get a guy like Kyle Gibson on this mound and then you turn it over to JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley, you're going to win a lot of games. Lance Lynn's looked really good. Obviously, Sonny Gray's a shutdown guy. So really, the only two starters I have concerns about when they go out there is Steven Matz, which it's been up and down. He's had blow up starts and he's had good 5-and-dive starts. And then you have Miles Michaelis, who's kind of a mixed bag. But the rotation's doing its job. The bullpen has been phenomenal so far. And then you look at the offense and it's like, okay, there's not a lot right there to go off of, but I'm just telling you, this team is a lot more talented. We've seen it before. I have an exercise later and we're going to go through that. I think will help us maybe calm down a little bit and realize what this offense can be. But even then, like Gorman goes 4 for 9 in this series, has a huge walk-off home run. Great today. Newbar has been clutch today. Goldie got 2 hits today. Arenado's heating up a little bit. Contreras is a 900 OPS plus right now. I don't see how this team is going to be as bad as it was last year. It's not the same team. Last year's team was terrible defensively, awful starting pitching, an average bullpen that got overused, so it was bad, and then a good but inconsistent offense. Even if the offense this year is good but inconsistent, you've got a great defense, a great bullpen, and an average pitching staff. That is a much better team. So that's my biggest takeaway from this series. John or Sandy, if one of you guys can jump in here. Is there something though from the series that, not that we've talked about that I don't think any of us are like, everything's great right now, but is there something that you're still like, I don't know about this part of the team, or something you're really concerned about, whether it's a specific player, maybe it's a bigger picture part of the offense? I know, Sandy, you've been concerned about runners in scoring position. Is that something you're still concerned about?
100%. So we've talked about this at length, and what Josh has pointed out is that they're not worse with runners in scoring position by that much.
Yeah. So if you look at the numbers,
without.
it's like a 0.010% shift in slug, OPS, OBP average. So they're pretty much bad all the time right now, which isn't good.
Yeah.
But you like in past years, they were good with no runners on base, and then guys get in scoring position and it like shoots down. It's like, why can't they hit like that?
That's weird to me, but I would also argue that teams should be better with runners in scoring position.
Fair.
Sample size is a little smaller. You're facing pitchers that have already put guys on base. You're facing guys that obviously don't have their best stuff, don't have their best control. Also, having runners on base forces pitchers out of the windup into the stretch. Like, that's something that should help. So there are a lot of different things that having runners on base should do for you. Also, having runners on base, you take out like fly balls that are normal outs, because those are sac flies now, and those don't go into your average with runners on base. Ground outs that score runs or even move guys over. So like, you should be better with runners in scoring position than you are without. And the fact that the Cardinals are worse, to me, it sucks. It's really frustrating. And in this series, they did get the big hit late today, but they were still like 1 for their last 23 at some point today. Going back to the last game of the Brewers series, was an 0 for 9, a 1 for 5, an 0 for 6. And it's just, you can't do that. It's not winning baseball. You have to come through in the clutch. And the other thing is the Cardinals continue to surrender the big hit to other teams in big scenarios. That was the story of the Brewers series. They just got the big hit the Cardinals needed. So
for sure,
it's got to get better.
John, anything for you standing out that you're still like, don't feel good about this?
I mean, I would say there's a couple bullpen arms that I'm sort of concerned about. Thompson obviously getting demoted today, helps a little, but replacing him with John King doesn't seem like that much of a game changer. And like we said, JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley have been lights out. Ollie was talking today after the game about the bullpen culture, and they're expecting that when the game gets handed over to those three, the game is over, and that's what you want. And I love that they're having that mentality, but you can't pitch those three every game. And you might have a couple back-to-back close games, and they're not always going to be available. So just really eager to get Keenan Middleton and Riley O'Brien back from the IL. But yeah.
Well, and something that would help is having a big enough lead that you don't have to actually use those guys. Like Helsley has pitched in every single win the Cardinals have recorded this season. That's ridiculous. He can't do that. Helsley can't pitch 88 times in a season. As much as you might want him to, it's just not possible. I mean, we can try it. Helsley's pitching way more right now than he's pitched in previous seasons. And that's just not going to keep up all year. Like, I'm sorry, Helsley's going to start to be unavailable more often because he's being overused right now. And Kittredge is a guy that's provided, like when he's healthy, he's provided a ton of volume. And I love that. I'm really big into volume relievers. That's why I defended Chris Stratton and why I defended Drew Verhagen like over and over again. I love it. But you have to get these guys out occasionally. You have to get them time to rest. And so the offense needs to come through and have a couple of blowout wins, be up 6-0 so that, Ryan Fernandez and John King can lock down the game and we can be done. Although I don't know if I'm ever going to be comfortable with John King in the game again.
That's fair. I mean, I do think, like, to John's point, though, you get Kenny Middleton back. Like, I don't know if he'll be as good as Kittredge and JoJo, but, like, if there's a game where Helsley's unavailable and one of those guys needs to be the closer that day, I mean, Keenan can go into that trio.
Absolutely.
Gio's looked really bad so far. I get that, but I also feel like if he's the 7th inning guy, you can do worse than that. And sometimes he's on, sometimes he's not. And then I kind of just believe that one of these guys, whether it's Robertson, Fernandez,
how about Liberatore?
Libby so far has looked pretty good. That I feel like part of the problems the past few years is when Helsley's unavailable, then Gio would be the guy that go to the 9th inning, and you didn't really have an 8th inning guy. So you're like hoping to get to Gio in the 9th, and then you're also like, it's still not our closer. Now I feel like they've got the pieces to come together where right now, when they have all their 3 best guys available, you can just lock it down. That's a win. But then maybe it's not like a 95% win probability, but it's still like 75, 80% when you turn it over to Middleton, JoJo, Kittredge, or Middleton, Libby, JoJo, whatever that is. So I do feel better about that. But to your point, Sandy, they can't have all their wins be but 2 or 3 run games. You got to start winning some games more than that.
Agreed.
But I do like that they're getting Helsley into more games right now, because last year there was like 2 different times last year where he went like 10 days without pitching and then like 6 days without pitching because they never had a lead. And so you got to keep them fresh. And it also tells where they're at right now and not like totally being blown out of the water.
Yeah.
So I agree with those points. Is it one for me is I don't know what they're going to do. This is projecting a little bit, but if Michaelis just can't figure it out, or if Matz can't figure out how to get into like the facing the lineup a 3rd time, I don't really know what they're going to do with those guys. Matz makes a little more sense to move to the bullpen in like a multi-inning role, and actually would be really helpful to what you're saying, Sandy, is a guy that can stretch out, do a couple innings. You're not using all of your 1 inning guys all the time.
Yeah.
But with Michaelis, like, he's not a bullpen guy. And if he's not eating innings, then it's like, I guess not every staff has 5 average guys. Like there's usually one guy that's kind of garbage. And if Michaelis is that guy this year and he's eating innings, I guess it's that every 5th day you're like, well, maybe we'll win, but if not, we're going to save the bullpen today. But he's a guy I don't know what they do with if he doesn't hit the injured list, if he's bad. At some point, it's too early to call up anyone. I don't believe in calling up Sem Rubbers right now, even with him pitching well. I mean, Graceffo maybe at some point. I doubt Tink Hence is going to be up this year. I doubt Tico Roby, anyone like that. So there's not really but maybe there's a deadline edition. But it's just kind of with the way they constructed this rotation, it's kind of weird to figure out who they can upgrade over, because the $16 million a year guy is usually not the guy the Cardinals want to bench. But yeah, anyways, I'm maybe projecting out a little bit. If he can stabilize and be more of a 4-5, then Matz becomes the easy candidate here. But that's just a level of concern for me. And then Goldie too. Like I know he's heating up, but I would maybe specifically say the Goldie Nato power outage. I mean, Goldie hit his first double today. Like when I saw that, I was like, wait, his first double today? And then obviously Nato's just not hitting for power. Weird. So sounding the alarms is not where I'm at with them yet, but I'm definitely like I thought this would get going by now, especially in the power department, and it hasn't.
Let me just point something interesting out before we turn away from Michaelis. Like maybe my dream scenario with Miles Michaelis is that he stabilizes a little bit and carries like some amount of value at the trade deadline. Not like a ton, but enough where it's like you can move this guy and it's not the end of the world trying to do it. And you can kind of get rid of that contract for next year. And I just was going back looking at some guys the Cardinals have acquired at the deadline recently, and J.A. Happ 2021 springs to mind. Look at Michaelis's stats and then listen to this. Before he was traded, he was in Minnesota for the first half. He ate a ton of innings, right? He pitched almost 100 innings in Minnesota, and he gave them a 6.77 ERA, which is terrible. Jeez. And that's worse than Michaelis's. He had a 63 ERA plus, which is almost identical to Michaelis's 64 to this point in the season. And Michaelis has had some worse luck. He had a bunch of inherited runners score that wasn't his fault. He actually had a pretty good start that day. And Michaelis eats more innings than that. So I'm starting to think that worst comes to worst, the Cardinals might be able to move him for something that doesn't really matter, like a lottery ticket guy, and just get rid of it. And a team could totally do worse, like you said, for a 5th starter. There are teams out there that would roster Michaelis, and there are teams out there that are interested in, maybe being at the edge of contention that would roster Michaelis. So I think the Cardinals can get rid of him if worse comes to worse, and it's not the worst thing ever.
Yeah, you might have to eat some of the contract though, because I feel like
Probably.
16 million and then another year guaranteed is probably gonna be tough to sell to people. But
It's
like that could
true.
be like the Mike Leake thing where they ate like a quarter of it or maybe half of it. I can't remember how much when they moved on from him. So maybe you
I'd
pay
totally
8
do
million, 6 million of Miles
Mhm.
Michaelis' salary. And if he's only making 10 million, that's pretty much the going rate. I mean, you saw what Gibson and Lance Lynn got this offseason.
Yeah.
So it's not
I'd,
that.
I'd totally eat 4 to 6 to be able to just start fresh next year with the pitching staff and be like, okay, who's going to compliment Gray? That's totally worth it to me.
That's something that, John, I don't know what you think about this, and I know like myself and Sandy and Andrew have talked about this a decent amount, but they extended Miles Michaelis last offseason because people were freaking out. And the Cardinals were kind of freaking out themselves too, being like, we have one starter under contract for next year, and it's Steven Matz. So they're like, hey, we got to sign someone. Jordan Montgomery, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I know people are like, they signed the wrong guy. Jordan Montgomery was not going to sign in spring training. He said he was open to it, but there was no way they were going to give him the kind of extension he would want. And he wasn't worth what he was worth in what people thought he was going to get in free agency last spring training because he didn't have an incredible year yet. He was coming off of a pretty good second half with the Cardinals. He wasn't a 600 or not 600 million. Jeez, definitely not that. He wasn't a 100 million plus guy yet. I mean, that was quite the stretch to say for Montgomery. So that wasn't happening. They didn't have to sign Michaelis. I just don't understand why they were so afraid to go into the offseason without 4 starters. They got 3 pretty quickly, and there's still guys out there. Like they could have got Michael Lorenzen in spring training. And I would have felt fine about that.
Frankie Montas was available. I said that
Yeah.
name all offseason. I would have taken him.
They could have gotten Gray, Lynn, Gibson, and then they could have gotten Montas or something like that instead. But they were so sold out that they have to sign this guy. And in their heads, they're probably thinking, well, if he repeats what he did in 2023 or 2022 and has an all-star type season, it's gonna be harder to sign him. But the odds of him repeating that were probably pretty low, and the odds of him doing something like this were probably a lot higher. And so instead of, I know they're trying to avoid having to overpay him later, but it really feels like they did the opposite and they overpaid him now. And I mean, even if they gave him 16 million for just 2024, that's one thing, but you've got him in 2025 too. John Mozeliak, I feel like he makes the small trades really good. He does those really well, going after the J. Haps, John Lesters. He honestly, the big moves for signings, like a Wilson Contreras type, he does. I mean, well, they mishandled him last year, but it looks really good right now. But it's these dumb extensions that they do that I'm like, oh my gosh, you didn't have to do that. You just decided to shoot yourself in the foot randomly. I don't know, John, does that make sense to you? Disagree on that? Anything with that?
No, I see where you're coming from. I mean, I think there's a few things to think about. A, they're afraid to go spend money on the market. That's been proven. B, he had a great year, and it's somewhat sensible to want to reward that a little bit.
Fair.
But the thing that springs to mind for me is sort of this tradition of the workhorse starter that knows the Cardinals culture, helping to carry over the culture and sort of the team within a team thing that Chris Carpenter was so about and so supportive of. Wainwright was leaving, and who's gonna carry the torch? Is it gonna be Steven Matz? He's probably not their guy for that. So that's the only other thing that maybe is a motivation in my eyes, is Michaelis knows the Cardinals culture, knows maybe the Cardinal way, whatever that means, and is sort of a stopgap to help some of the young guys learn a thing or two.
No, that's a great point, because he's not going to sign a 1-year deal last spring training, and then that fear becomes real that if they were going to bring him back anyways, you might as well. And they were smart. They upped his salary in 2022 or 2023 to kind of make up for, so that they could bring the AAV down in these past few years. So that's something Gersh is really good at. Is he's kind of been known as the guy who attaches these team options to end of deals. He moves the money around to try and give them space to do things. So that's some silver lining. I still don't agree with the signing, but makes more sense there. So
yeah, maybe a motivation more than anything, more than a justification. It's just an explanation, maybe. Yeah. For sure. So Sandy, okay, so there's some roster moves that happened. I know everyone wants to talk about them. Can you refresh our memory real quick what happened, and we'll kind of get into it?
Yeah, let's shuffle the deck here. So Jordan Walker was optioned to Triple-A, which we've already seen a bunch of that in the chat. And then along with him went Zack Thompson on the heels of a disastrous outing the other night. And then recalled from Triple-A, we have John King. So that's, everyone get excited about that. And then I believe it was Jose Fermin was the other name.
Yes.
So on the surface, that's a net negative, right? Like Jordan Walker is the future of St. Louis, former top overall prospect. Fermin is a guy that most people don't know his name. And then Zack Thompson's a former first-round pick for the Cardinals as well, a guy that a lot of us were thinking could slot into the rotation at some point this year. The wheels fell off the other night, just got absolutely torched by the Diamondbacks lineup, and John King was the throw-in piece in the Sajazi Roby Montgomery trade. And so now he's back. He's like a ground ball guy, but he got absolutely wrecked by the Dodgers early in the season, lost that game. People are upset about that. So that's what we've got so far. Those are the moves.
Yeah. So Sandy, I would love to hear your thoughts on this first, but if you're tuning in right now, we've got a good turnout so far. Thanks for joining us. But if you're listening on audio platforms, we appreciate that as well. But if you're watching live on YouTube right now, please hit the like button. It helps out the video a lot and helps it get to more people. And then if you haven't subscribed already, again, we go live twice a week. We do emergency episodes, which honestly, if we weren't going live already today, we probably would have done one with the Walker stuff here.
Yeah.
But lots of fun content coming in. Again, also we got Note News coming soon with John. So just stay tuned for more content with that. But Sandy, your initial thoughts on, Thompson too, we can get into that, but the Jordan Walker being sent down is the big one. Is that a move you agree with? And then does that change your level of are you more concerned about Walker long term? I know we're concerned about him right now. Like, what does this do for you?
I don't know. It's a bummer, first off, right? Like, you don't want to see Jordan Walker get sent down in his second year. We did this last year. Jordan Walker started off like pretty hot and then cooled off, got sent down, came back up, and it was actually a lot better. And the Jordan Walker post call up was fantastic. So I'm hoping it looks like that. And if that's the case, then they're handling it right. People will criticize the Cardinals so much for what they did with Jordan Walker last year. I actually didn't hate it. I didn't think it was the end of the world. I've said that a number of times. And I feel the same way about this. Jordan Walker, it's not working right now. I love Jordan Walker. I believe that he is going to be very, very good in the future. I believe he has future all-star written all over him. He is one of the most exciting prospects I've seen as a Cardinals fan in my entire life. But Jordan Walker, it's not working right now. It's been terrible this year, and sending him down to Triple-A where he can get everyday at-bats without hurting the team is probably the right call.
Yeah. John, how did you feel about it when you saw that?
Yeah, I saw a tweet from Katie Wu earlier today. Like the Cardinals can't be at their best when Walker's performing like he is. We've sort of seen this film before. He struggles, like you were saying, Sandy, gets sent down and comes back and mashes. So hopefully that's the case. He was just hitting too many on the ground, and you look at his baseball savant page, and it's icicles. He's got a high barrel percentage and a high average exit velocity, but outside of that, he's not contributing like he should be and like he can be. So it's not the end of the world, I don't think. I think it can work out, and clearly he went through it last year and handled it well mentally. So people talk about sending young guys up and down and how that affects them mentally. He already did and was successful, and so I'm not too worried about that necessarily. I'm worried about, what would worry me would be if they didn't do anything, they just sat on their hands and didn't do anything, and he just continued to struggle. So we'll see.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And to refresh people's memory a little bit. So at the time that Jordan Walker was sent down last year, he did 98 WRC plus. So he was a below league average hitter. I know he had that awesome hit streak, which is super cool, but he was hitting ground balls most of the time. Yeah. And it's like, that's why it's some of these like a cycle. It's really cool, but what does it mean? I'd rather have 4 home runs than a single double.
Totally agree.
Home run. But it's still fun. It's still cool. A hitting streak. It's great, but you can get one hit in every game and not really be that impactful of a hitter. They don't want Jordan Walker to be a 700 OPS guy. They want him to be a middle of the order bat long term. Mm-hmm. Send him down. He spent a month in May. He comes back up at the very beginning of June, and he had a 120 WRC plus the rest of the year. So he's 20% above league average, which would have put him as one of the top 35 hitters in all of baseball. It worked. And he started to hit the ball harder. He started with consistently, which he was already kind of hitting the ball hard, but it was into the ground, line drives, home runs. And then the last month of the year, he was a 130 WRC plus guy. So
Mhm.
I don't see the problem sending him down. Like both of you said, like it's kind of just time at this point. He's actually hurting the team at the plate. I know his defense had gotten better, but
That's
I mean,
very positive.
he only had like 10 at bats since like Friday until yesterday's game or something like that. Like they weren't playing him a lot. Go let him work on stuff. Here's the bigger takeaway from me is, and I've got to start telling myself this, we got to stop rushing these guys. And I think like this year, obviously Walker was going to start on the opening day roster. Like it wouldn't have made sense to start him in Triple-A. But the fact that the Cardinals, and I mean, I have to own this. I said Jordan Walker should be on the opening day roster last year. The fact that he started on the opening day roster last year is where all this mess began. He had 0 playing time in Triple-A, and players of his talent and of his pedigree have shown they can skip Triple-A and do really well. But that is the exception, and like the very minor exception, not the norm.
Yeah.
They've done this with Dylan Carlson, where they brought him up really quickly. They did it with Nolan Gorman, who basically had a month in AAA before they brought him up. There's someone else I'm missing right now that they had kind of skipped the level a little bit with. But
Victor Scott.
Victor Scott, yeah. Oh my gosh, I don't forget about that. Every guy that skips the AAA level for the Cardinals, Blake Newberry put this really great piece about this over on Viva Alberto's. I'm just like, man, you're right. Like this is good. Those guys that don't get a lot of time in AAA have a way higher failure rate, or at least regression rate from what we're expecting them, than the Donovans, who started a lot of time at AAA. Newbar spent a lot of time at AAA. Herrera spent a ton of time at AAA. Again, I'm missing another name there that spent a lot of time at AAA. But the guys that get time at that level, there is just a huge, even from AAA to the major league level, there is a significant gap. There's a huge jump. So to expect guys to go from playing a little bit of Double-A, Jordan Walker was basically a year and a half removed from high school, and now you've got him playing opening day, biggest stage, new position, face of the franchise. Like, yes, he could have risen to the occasion, but it was way more likely he was going to fail. And so, like, I'm looking at a Thomas at JC in AAA right now, who's had 30-ish games at the AAA level. Like, I love him. I'm so excited, but I'm like screaming, do not call him up. Don't ruin another guy. Let him just demolish AAA pitching. Let him get all the confidence in the world before you bring him up. I say this because I think like we get frustrated at these young guys for failing, and then we call them busts and we move on to the next one, and we do the same thing where we're like, oh, Jordan Walker sucks, let's bring up Thomas to JC then instead. And then Thomas to JC fails, and it's like, okay, let's bring up Chase Davis instead and bring him up too early, then he fails. Be patient with these guys. Now, Jordan Walker is not a failure. I don't even think he's in the same class. He's a way different prospect than Nolan Gorman was and Dylan Carlson was. He was like a true top end prospect in all of baseball. I know those guys were top 20, but there's a difference between them. Walker's still 22 years old. I am not concerned about him long term. I think he's going to be great. But I just think we put so much pressure on these guys. And the Cardinals last year, they didn't have to do it. They had Dylan Carlson right there, who could have been the guy in right field. And they decided we're going to go Jordan Walker. That's my biggest takeaway right now is the Cardinals you can't fix your major league issues with guys who aren't ready yet and just be like, well, let's hope this pans out. I think that they think it through more than that. I'm dumbing it down. But I think we as fans, and I don't think they listen to this podcast or Twitter or anything like that, or like, oh, we have to start Jordan Walker now because everyone wants him. But I see this too much where people want to rush the young talent. It's exciting, it's fun, but then it's not good for the player. Be patient with these guys. That's my biggest takeaway. Feel free to disagree with me on that, Sandy or John, but I just feel like that's my biggest takeaway is be patient with the young talent.
Yeah, I also feel like, after Walker was mashing in spring training last year, all of the talk of the last person to do this was Albert Pujols. Didn't do him any favors, and definitely didn't do Cardinals Twitter any favors when it comes to him struggling. And it's it just sort of built up the expectations, and like you're saying, the expectations get so high that when someone so young that is like relatively so inexperienced struggles, it's a huge disappointment. When in reality, the time span and the time range is much longer than that. And, we don't know how it's going to end. We don't know what's going to happen next, but, I'm not too worried, like I said, but, all the talk of comparing him to all these big players at such a young age definitely didn't do us any favors, and I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be great. But, these things take time. You look at Jackson Holiday, the most hyped prospect, this year. And coming from some great, Holiday family pedigree, he's struggling too. And it's, it doesn't just happen with just a few players here and there. It happens all the time, and
For sure.
I think we need to realize that.
100%. Yeah, like you said, it's just hard to hit big league pitching. It's something that takes a lot of time to learn. Look at Wyatt Langford too. Like Wyatt Langford's stats aren't great so far this year, and a bunch of people wanted the Nationals to rush Dylan Cruz. I'm not sure he'd be faring that much better right now. It just takes time, and that's why, in my opinion, the older, more mature bats on the Cardinals offense should be held accountable for what's going on right now. And some of these younger bats, we should be talking about how the organization has dealt with them. The other problem is sample size. Baseball fans are ridiculous because they don't understand that a 25 at bat sample size is not enough to make a judgment. I see these people on Twitter and they're like, oh my gosh, Jackson Holliday is a bust. No, he's not. He's just played for like 12 games. Give him some time.
Oh man.
Give Jordan Walker some time. Like, let him go to Triple-A, let him come back. If Jordan Walker sucks in 2029, yeah, maybe he's a bust. People do this so quickly. And they're like, oh, Goldie's washed. Dude, it's April 21st. Like, Goldie's not washed. Or I guess it's April 24th today. Like, he's not washed. It's a very small sample size, less than a month of baseball. So, we have to just give enough time for these things to normalize over long trends.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting, or I'll just jump in real quick, is it's interesting to look at debut age too. I think that matters. Like a Brendan Donovan, who was a rookie at age 26, I think. Newbar was around 26 as well.
Yeah.
Like they're like our young guys, but they're in their late 20s because they had some time in the minor leagues and they're college prospects as well. So they're a little bit more developed. You look at some of like the Orioles that are playing really well. Like Adley Rutschman was a rookie at age 24, so 4 years older than Jordan Walker was. Jordan Westberg's 24 and he's been killing it. But again, he's not a 20-year-old like Jackson Holliday here. And there's this super rare 20-year-old who can come up and mash. And those guys are Ronald Acuna, Julio Rodriguez, Juan Soto. It is like generational talents. And I think Walker's probably, I still think he's somewhere in between that, where he's not quite a generational talent, but he's not the typical prospect either, or typical top prospect either. I think he's going to be awesome. But again, I was wanting him, so I can't act like I knew this, but I gotta calm down with these guys. The Cardinals need to calm down with some of these guys. John, I don't know where you were going to jump in with there, but I think age matters with some of these guys.
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to ask what y'all think of, in the same vein, Mason Wynn, holding him back at Triple-A for half of the year last year. And he's, only 22, right? So, and, struggled last year, but had, half a season of experience under his belt and then an off season to work on it. And look at him now, he's doing so well. I'm loving watching Mason Wynn, but where does he fit into sort of your take and rushing all these young players?
Well, I think it kind of like back to he spent almost a full year at AAA. And then same with like an Ivan Herrera, like he got his cup of, like, actually he's a great example of this. A couple of years ago, he comes up, the Cardinals are like, oh, he's nowhere near ready. We need to sign Wilson Contreras. Spends they were super aggressive with Ivan Herrera's promotions. He was at levels where usually catchers his age are 2 or 3 levels below. So they kept aggressively pushing him. He makes it in the major leagues. He's clearly not ready. Spends a year at AAA, demolishes. Now look at him. Like he's a major league catcher now. So I think
he is slumping right now, but he is good.
Yeah. And I mean, he was what was he, like 850 OPS for a little bit there? Like that would have been wild if he could have held that up.
Yeah, seriously.
So I think age matters here, at least in terms of like the debut in time. But like, I mean, 22-year-old Mason Wynn, I think the progression made sense with him, where they were very cautious. They kept, I mean, it's what they're doing to Kent's right now. And I love it. It's frustrating to watch when he's just not, like he got into the 6th inning for the first time ever this year. Wild. He's been in the organization 3 years, but.
And that dude is not ready to pitch in a major league rotation.
Oh no, he's not. And so it's like, I'm thankful that there have been guys they've been cautious with. I honestly, in a weird way, it's like you go all the way back to Oscar Taveras, and not that they rushed him, but ever since that situation, obviously it's tragic he passed away, and it's like what could have been with that. But ever since then, they've been like grasping at thin air, trying to figure out this outfield situation. They traded for Jason Hayward. They traded for Marcelo Zuna. They signed Dexter Fowler. They go and do all these crazy things. They promote Jordan Walker too quick. They do all this stuff, and it's like they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And it's like they honestly, like, I wonder what Dylan Carlson would have been if they didn't rush him. Like, could this outfield be stabilized now if they had been more patient with some of these guys? But they stunt the development of one, then they discard them. They go play well elsewhere. I don't know, but I'm starting to see the trend here. again, I've say sometimes like they get too much crap for the Randy Rosarina, Adolis Garcia, but I think it's the rushing of them and then they're too quick to discard them. And then they go and have success elsewhere because it's like, hey, these guys were 22 years old and you gave up on them and you went to the next outfield prospect. And it's like, it's crazy they've had this many shots at it. Like, how many guys can lose as many outfielders as they have and still have Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, Dylan Carlson, Victor Scott, Brendan Donovan? Like, they still have a ton of options. So, yeah, that's where I land with it.
Well, part of it is it's really hard for the Cardinals to give. So, like for example, Adolis Garcia got to treat MLB as quadruple A for 2 full years with the Rangers. Like, Lane Thomas has been in quadruple A for multiple years with the Nationals because the Nationals suck. The Nationals are terrible. Lane Thomas goes there in 2021 with no expectations. 2022, the Nationals are 100-game losers. Like, who cares? Who cares if Lane Thomas is there and is garbage? And so he gets a chance, like, zero pressure, just gets to hit, just gets to exist. Adolis Garcia got to do that with the Rangers. Rosarina didn't get to do that with the Rays. That's a little different, but I think he was a much better prospect than either of them. And I liked Lane Thomas a lot. But, you know, like, these guys have had opportunities the Cardinals actually can't afford to give. Now, there's probably an argument that the Cardinals could do that right now with Jordan Walker. Like, we kind of did it last year. We were really bad last year, but also the environment's just different. Like, Cardinals fans don't accept that. You know, like, DC fans are kind of like, all right, we won our World Series. Like, cool. We'll kind of chill now. They sold everything off and they're clearly rebuilding. The Cardinals haven't rebuilt in so long. You can't do that. You can't just put this roster out of quadruple A players and hope somebody figures it out at the big league level because they're trying to win every year. You have Goldie and Arenado who are just getting older. You can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's an excellent point. I mean, it's like Anthony Volpe last year. Like, he was probably rushed, but it's like if he's on the Nationals, people are like, hey, still high upside. But like Yankees fans are like wanting to tear him apart because they're like, why is he on the team anymore?
Look at CJ Abrams. Like, Abrams is a very middling prospect who had a terrible season with the Nationals last year, but this year, 2 years ago, he was not great with Nationals. And then last year he started to grow. And it's like, you didn't have people like, you know, ripping the Nationals for having him out there every day. Gray has been the same way, and Gray's turned into like a pretty solid pitcher with the Nationals, a guy that a lot of people like going ahead. So the Cardinals just don't have that luxury.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, again, I kind of went off, and I want to be clear. I'm not giving up on Jordan Walker. I still think he's going to be awesome. Honestly, really haven't changed my opinion of him long-term. It's just, I thought this would be the year he breaks out. Maybe in the second half or maybe in June when he gets called up, whatever it is. Just not it right now. And Nolan Gorman, I still feel great about. Dylan Carlson's one where I don't see him being that everyday guy anymore. But anyway, I went off, and I don't want to make it sound like I've given up on these guys because I've already seen tweets go out where people are like, oh, Jordan Walker, another failed Cardinals prospect. It's like, oh my gosh, calm down. But
none of them are failed yet.
Yeah, none of them are really failed yet. Jordan Walker especially not. So stop that. If you're pumping that narrative, it does not make sense. I do want to jump into the offense conversation a little more, though, and I have an exercise. So if you're listening in audio, if you're watching right now, grab a paper and a pen. Maybe grab your phone if that's helpful for you. I'm going to have John and Sandy go through something with me for a minute. And wherever you land right now, if you're in the chat, maybe top in here, like, what do you think the Cardinals offense is? Do you think it's not what it's played so far? Do you think it's a bad offense and it's just going to be bad? Do you think it's a league average unit? Do you think it's a top 10 unit? Like, what do you think this lineup is? I want to go through real quick. And because I think sometimes we can say, hey, this is going to be terrible. And then you kind of nitpick it piece by piece. And you're like, actually, it really shouldn't be that bad. I'm kind of giving away the exercise already, but I'm going to go through it. So John and Sandy, I don't know if you have a phone, pen and paper ready or something like that, but I want you to write these names down. And then I want you to tell me if they're going to be a league average hitter or not. Just league average. You don't have to tell me if they're going to be more or less. You have to tell me if they're league average. League average, 100 WRC plus. If you're listening, you can play this exercise with me as well. I went and looked last year. There was like 3 hitters that were exactly league average, and they were about a 710 OPS. Okay. So about a 710 OPS is a league average hitter. It gives or takes a little bit. Sometimes you have a higher average, higher slug. But it's about a 710 OPS. Let's go through real quick. I'm going to give you different names of hitters, and you can tell me, but I want you to just mark down for your own league average or not. So Brendan Donovan, will he be at least a 710 OPS this year or low? Or will he be 710 OPS or lower this year? And then we can just do all of them. I'm going to say mine as we go through. Brendan Donovan. I think it's pretty safe to say he'll at least be league average this year. Wilson Contreras. Lars Nootbaar. Nolan Arenado. Paul Goldschmidt. Nolan Gorman. Ivan Herrera. Sorry if I'm going too fast. You know the names though. Jordan Walker. Mason Wynn. Tommy Edmonds. So you should have 10 guys written down. This is about their 10 regular guys that they should be playing this year. League average. You don't have to tell me if they're going to be better than league average. Just will they be league average or worse? Once you've tallied it up, tell me how many of the 10 hitters you have being league average or better. I will actually, I don't want to reveal mine totally yet. I see in the chat, I mean, I have not seen a single no for any of these hitters so far yet. It's mostly Talik in here. Talik, appreciate you being in here. Listening audio. Again, league average is a 100 WRC plus or a 710 OPS. That was I wish I remember the player comp for who was the 710 OPS. It was actually kind of a bigger name than I thought they'd be. They had a down year. I'll see if I can find that as we're going through. Sandy, have you finished yours yet?
I'm debating one or two right now.
That's fair. John, how about you?
I'm in the same boat, still marinating right now.
That's fair. I'm going to see if I can pull this up. Why is this? Thanks. If you're listening,
Ipe is in there. Look at that. No for all of them.
Whatever, Ipe. Get out of here,
I think I've got my number here.
Okay. How many of the 10 guys did you? Okay, so league average. DJ LeMahieu last year was 101. Bryson Scott, Brian Hayes, Thiago Estrada, Carlos Santana were all about 101 WRC plus. Jeff McNeil, Stephen Kwan, Eddie Rosario were 100. Orlando Arcia, Alex Verdugo, Leonardo Tavares, Jeremy Pena were all like 99-ish. Okay, how many of the 10 hitters, Sandy, did you have being league average or better?
8, and I feel really confident about that number.
8. Okay, 8 of the 10 being league average.
Yeah.
John, how many did you have being league average?
8 as well, actually.
8 as well. Okay, I went ahead and put 9. I had the only one I didn't have being league average was Edmund, but really it's like, well, it could have been Walker, could have been Wynn, but I feel pretty confident about 9 of these guys. But then 8 of them could be, I don't know, something like that. Now let's go through. I'm going to give you what a 30% above league average guy is, a 20% above league average guy is, and a 10% above league average guy is. I want you to go through and tell me how many of these guys there are. So let's start with 130. Pick out if you think there's anyone who could be 130 or above. So that was about Brandon Nimmo last year. That was an 829 OPS. So 130 WRC plus means you're 30% above league average, 30% better than the league average hitter. That's about 35 hitters last year. Brandon Nimmo, 829 OPS. How many guys do you think could be one? That's the low, or that's the highest I'm going to go. I'm not going to go into the 140s or 150s.
You're saying could be or will be?
Will be this year. Like how many of these guys will be a 130?
My answer is different now than it was before the season. Talking
about same
season long statistic. This is hard.
Same. Or maybe how about this? Even starting today, like from today till the rest of the year, because obviously like the beginning of the season stats can weigh stuff down. But like, again, you can't unplay those games you played earlier. So it really doesn't, like for the rest of the season, it matters how they play. How many guys do you think are 130 or better WRC plus? Again, that's like Brandon Nimmo last year. I'll see if I can find some other names that are around 130 and exactly how many guys were 130 or better. Oh, 130 or better is actually less. It's 17 guys last year, but that's qualified. Tristan Casas was a little bit lower. Luis Robert was a little bit lower. And then Luis Ariz, Corbin Carroll, JP Crawford were all a little bit above. How many guys do you think are a 130 WRC plus guy this year? I had 1.
I've like moving from now, I think like 2 or 3 still.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
I'm saying 2 or 3.
Okay.
I mean, Wilson Contreras is our 1, right?
Yeah, yes. I had Wilson Contreras.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Any other guys you had?
I think Goldschmidt is still going to get it together. Like before the season, I absolutely would have said Goldschmidt. And if I get to take out the previous games and just say moving forward, like, yeah, I think Goldschmidt's more than capable of having an 820, 830 OPS. And Arenado is kind of the same way. Like he should have that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's do 120 real quick. And so then again, obviously you can rule out the guys you already said 130 for. 120 last year is about an 815 OPS, and that's about where Xander Bogaerts and Christian Walker were last year. I'll see if I can find some other player comps. A little bit above 120 was Jose Ramirez, Gleyber Torres, Paul Goldschmidt last year, Christian Yelich, Lamont Wade Jr., Jake Berger was 120, just under 120, Anthony Santander and Kyle Schwarber. I'll go ahead and give mine. I had 3 guys as a 120 or better this year, and that was Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, and Nolan Gorman. Honestly, I could have put Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in there, but I'm gonna bank. For the sake of this exercise, since I'm usually the super optimistic person, I'm gonna go in a world where they're not bouncing back and they're not 20% or above league average. So I had 3 different hitters in the 120 category. Sandy, John, and if you're in the chat, if you're following along and playing this, so Lucas had 0 guys 130 or better. That's okay. I mean, the Cardinals had 0 guys last year too, so that's fair. If you're in the chat, how many guys you have 20% above league average? That's 815 OPS or better. John, Sandy, do you guys have your numbers already?
I think I'm looking at like 3, maybe 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that including your 130 guys or like 120 guys? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking Donnie gets it done. I'm thinking Gorman can keep it going. And then I was sort of on the fence with Goldie in terms of 130 or 120. So I'll put him here at 120. And then I don't know. I think Nootbaar breaks out. I like him.
I like it.
Sandy,
what do you got?
Yeah, I have 6 right now, and that's not including Jordan Walker. It's the same, including the 130 guys. So like I think Donovan gets there.
Okay.
I put Contreras already. I think Nootbaar is going to get there because the on base percentage just carries. He can slug like 420 and have an 800 OPS.
Yeah.
I put Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in the first category because I really do believe they're still good hitters. And honestly, in the last 5 games, they've been our best hitters. And then I put Gorman in the 130 actually, because I'm trying not to let a 20 game sample size like sour my opinion of a guy who all offseason I said was going to hit 35 homers this year. And he might not reach that number at this point, but he's more than capable of hitting 40 home runs in a season. And I think that if the Cardinals are going to be the best version of themselves, Gorman is a 130 OPS plus hitter.
Okay. I like it. I just saw Lucas in the chat say, have 5 120 WRC plus guys, but not a standout offensively. I'll get to that in a second, because I'm gonna give you some team comps in a little bit to give you like what kind of teams put these things together. So you guys both have about 6 to 7 hitters, right, that are 120 or better?
Yeah, I have 6 right now. Yeah.
Okay, that only 45 players in all of baseball had a 120 or WRC plus or higher last year.
That's nuts.
So what you guys are saying is that the Cardinals are gonna have 6 of the top 45 hitters in baseball in their lineup, and there's 30 teams.
Yeah, we're really.
So I'm just saying like, this is, already I'm like, okay. So I went a little bit more pessimistic. I only have 3 120 guys and 1 130. So I have 4 guys in the top 45 hitters in baseball. And this is qualified. So if you had done like 300 plate appearances or whatever, more people make the list. So it's not super fair because there's part-time players and catchers that don't make the list. But
Jock Peterson.
Okay. Then let's finish this. Yeah, true. Let's finish this out. So you had everyone as you guys each had 1 guy or 2 guys being below league average. Does that mean you have any guys 110 WRC plus, or all of your guys accounted for already?
Yeah, I stuck Jordan Walker in the 110, and then I've got Mason Wynn at like 100 to 105 probably.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Those are my 2 left over.
Okay. So I had let's see. I had 3 110s with Walker, Goldie, and Nato. I had 3 120s. I had 1 130, 1 100, and 1 sub 100 on the season. So again, I'm going to go ahead and kind of kill this all and kind of give us all of our things here. So I went and looked. A league average offense last year. So the 15th ranked offense and 14th ranked offense. They both had 101 WRC plus as a team last year. It was the Los Angeles Angels and New York Mets. The Mets had 4 hitters that were 120 or better WRC plus. They had 0 hitters that were 110 or better. They had 3 hitters that were 100 or better, and they had 3 hitters that were sub 100 out of the top 10 plate appearances that they had last year. Los Angeles Angels had 2 guys who had a 130 WRC plus or higher, other qualified guys, or other leading plate appearances guys. 110 WRC plus. They had 3 guys. They had 5 guys hit below 100 So that were below league average, and they had one guy right at league average. And those were the two middle of the pack lineups. The Cardinals are ranked like 27th in baseball right now, 26th in baseball. They are not a bad offense. Okay. This is not who they're going to be the whole year. I'm not saying they for sure are going to be a top 10 unit, but if they can jump from being one of the worst offenses in baseball to a middle of the pack offense, this team already is above 500 and on its way. Now, the 10th ranked offense in baseball last year was the Philadelphia Phillies, and they had a team WRC plus of 105. They had only two hitters on their team last year with a 120 WRC plus or higher. I think it was Bryce Harper and it wasn't even Trey Turner. It might have been JT
Schwarber, maybe.
Schwarber was like 119.
Castellanos.
Something. And then they had 5 guys 100 or better. So they had five guys about league they were around league average. So they were less than 110. They had 1 guy 110 and 2 guys below league average.
Interesting.
So they had just 2 guys above 120, and you guys you guys had 6 for the Cardinals this year.
Yeah, these are the talking points from the offseason. I know.
I'm just saying, and so it's like even if you guys are like, hey, there's 6, and it ends up only being 4, that's 2 more than the Phillies last year.
Yeah.
Like, this offense is going to be fine. I know it's bad right now. I know. But it's going to be okay. And when it's okay, this pitching, if it sustains, which right now, I mean, we could do the exercise the other way. There's not really any unsustainable pitching right now. You look at the team ERAs. I mean, obviously Sonny Gray is not going to have a 0 ERA this year. That's not going to happen. But he's an ace. Maybe Lance Lynn has some aggression. The bullpen seems pretty equal, though. The back end of the rotation feels honestly like there's positive regression coming. I don't think there's any part of this team that is overperforming right now, but there is a big whopping red sign of an offense that is not performing like it should be and is much better than what it's doing right now.
Yeah.
That is why I scream from the mountaintops, stop giving up on this team, stop giving up on this offense. I'm not trying to say they're the Braves or the Dodgers or anything like that. They are more than capable of competing in the NL Central. They are more than capable of being a wild card team at the very least or winning the NL Central this year. Okay, I know that was elongated exercise. Sandy, you go through that. How does that make you feel about the offense after you kind of looked at it piece by piece?
Sorry, I just lost you for a second.
Oh, no, you're good.
Again, my Wi-Fi is trash.
You did this exercise. I know that we're all like frustrated by the offense right now.
Yeah.
How do you feel after doing an exercise like this?
Well, I feel like the offense should be good. Of course, I know that. Like, that's the talking point from the offseason. I like the reason I love this offense is because there are all these young guys and these older bats who are all good, and they're all supposed to league average offense. So an offense full of a bunch of 100 WRC plus guys, in theory, should have a team that's like not a contender, but like, hey, you can make the playoffs. Like, you'll win 80 games. And so the Cardinals have a bunch of guys that are better than that. And that's why all offseason we were like, oh, yeah, if even 2 of them take a step forward and become a star, then this might be a top 2 or 3 unit in baseball. And no one will be like super surprised. But also I'm thinking about what I've seen this year, and it's not souring my opinion on individual players or anything, but it is hard to have faith in this offense as a unit when only one player so far has actually been good. Like, I can only point to one guy who's hit. Like, at the beginning of the season, it was Wilson Contreras was having a little power, but he wasn't hitting for average, and Brendan Donovan was hitting well. Everyone else was terrible. And then as things have changed, like Nootbaar got hot for a second and then cooled off. Arenado got hot for a second, kind of cooled off a bit. Donovan went into a big slump, which he's in now, and Wilson Contreras has been the only guy that's been good. And so, like, as good as the processes are, as good as the roster construction of the offense is, the outcomes right now are just terrible. And, like, you know, I would say a player probably slumps like less than 25% of the time, right? Like, I would say someone's in a slump maybe 10% of the time that they're in the big leagues. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable, maybe even less than that for some guys.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. I bet there's some kind of study out there on that. We should.
Yeah, I bet there is. But like, the odds of 9 of these guys slumping at the same time is also extraordinarily low.
Yeah.
Like, astronomically low. It's weird that it's happening. And so when all of that's going on, it makes it really, really hard for me to be like, yeah, I still believe, because like that also shouldn't be happening either.
Yeah. But it's also part of it too, is that you're like no offense at like, it's almost like last year where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It feels like that the offense right now, where it's like you're even the best lineups in baseball don't have all 9 guys firing on all cylinders to their highest potential at the same time. And so it's like for how rare it is for the offense to be this bad right now, even if only 4 or 5 of the bats were producing well, they would be a lot better right now. So
we'd probably have
part of
15
it is like
wins.
until this series, like I mean, you looked at the OPSs today. You had Contreras over 900 and everyone else was 700 or less. Like that is just wild. So that means you had one extremely good hitter and everyone else was below league average. That just is not going to happen. John, how do you feel about the lineup after doing something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still optimistic about it. You know, we look every single year, pitching is better in April, and it takes players a while to warm up, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. You know, defense. You know, people say defense never slumps, and pitching, you know, doesn't really slump. You know, people figure certain pitchers out, but pitching, you know, is, you know, more or less doesn't slump. But offense does, and offense goes through cold streaks and hot streaks, and right now it's just a really prolonged cold streak is I think what we're seeing. But I think we're starting to see signs of them figuring it out. You know, Arenado had a clutch hit today. Contreras continues to do well, and you know, Gorman with a walk-off homer going 2 for 4 yesterday, and then an RBI today. Hopefully he's starting to figure things out. Nootbaar, you know, I think he had 4 RBI on the series. You know, so I think they're starting to turn a corner, hoping they're starting to turn a corner. And I am like cautious, but not worried, I would say right now.
Yep, I totally agree. And it's like at this, you watch the offense. I'm not trying to act like we should have watched this offense and been like, oh well. It's like, it sucks. I hate watching it. It's not fun.
Frustrating. Yeah.
Frustrating. But I don't think it should change our opinion about them all the time, because if for them to be this bad all year would be wild.
It'd be weird.
So,
but it's weird to this point already, is my point. Like, the Cardinals definitely have bad luck. Like, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. The Brewers series was crazy. We had no umpire favor in each of the 3 games, and the third game was like wildly out of our favor. We're somehow ranked like 28th in the league in umpire favor so far, according to umpire scorecards on Twitter, which really sucks. Like, that's terrible luck. The first run of the day for the Diamondbacks today came on a 49-mile-an-hour flare off the bat. And it's like right over Nolan Arenado's head. It was classified as a pop-up. Pop-ups in general, I think, have an 0.75 batting average on balls in play. It's the worst type of contact you can make. It's literally better to hit a ground ball right at the pitcher than it is to hit a pop-up. So, I mean, all of this stuff, like the Cardinals have terrible luck. They had terrible luck last year. The injuries are just weird. Like Lars Nootbaar fractures his ribs diving for a ball. That's crazy. But when it keeps happening again and again and again, it's really hard for me to keep calling it bad luck. Because, like, I can look at it and I can say that shouldn't happen. That's really unfortunate. But it's happened for roughly like 16 months now with like no respite. And so it's like, is it bad luck, or is it, you know, bad training staff? Is it bad decision making? Is it bad hitting? What is it?
Honestly, I would even like, and we can move because I know we're almost at an hour now, so we'll wrap up here in a second. But
yeah,
I just wouldn't even call it bad luck. I would just say they've been bad this year, and it's just, I mean, like every team has good and bad luck, and they've just been bad, but they're not this bad. That's just the crux of my.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not even blaming it on some random hit balls there, line drives, like that has happened. There has been a robbed home run. End of the day, though, the offense is not producing, and I just don't believe that it will not produce like this all year long.
Yeah, I guess it's fair to say the Cardinals should be forcing the issue with an offense this talented. Like, okay, so what? You have a home run robbed. It doesn't mean you shouldn't hit one in 11 days.
Yep.
You know,
totally.
Absurd drought.
I'd say Burleson is having bad luck, but outside of them, like you're saying, Josh, they've just been bad.
Poor Burley. That's
poor Burley.
Poor guy. Oh my goodness. Well, now we've got an interesting series against the Mets coming up, right? And so the Cardinals seemed to get right in this last series. The pitching, again, was really good outside of that disastrous appearance from Zack Thompson. And, you know, we'll just show you the flop here real quick. So game 1 is going to be on Friday. So we'll have a nice little off day tomorrow. I love off days these days because the Cardinals can't lose, so I can't be upset. But you'll have Michaelis, who's 1-3 with a 6.49 ERA, facing off against Buto, a younger pitcher for the Yankees, who's got a 1.65 ERA on the season, but no decisions so far. Then you've got Sonny Gray. He's 2-1 with a 1.04 ERA on Saturday, facing off against Hauser, former Brewers pitcher. He's been disastrous this year for the Mets, 0-2 with a 7.45 ERA. And then the series finale on Sunday will feature Lance Lynn, still 1-0 with his sparkling 2.81 ERA,
Whoa.
facing off against Jose Quintana, big Q, huge Q, former Cardinal, 1-2 with a 4.21 ERA on the season. Looking at those matchups, I think the Cardinals should win 2 of these 3 games. We should either be able to take advantage of a young pitcher, which we didn't do the other night with Henry, which is really frustrating, but we should either be able to take advantage of him. We should tee off on Hauser, and it's great to have Gray on that day because that's just a free win if the Cardinals play the way they should. And they should either be able to beat up Buto or they should be able to beat up Quintana, who's not been great this year and is getting pretty old.
The only pitcher that I think worries me a little is actually Buto, because he's got an 11.6 K per 9
really
with a 1.65 ERA, like you were saying. So
that's really good.
It doesn't seem like guys have been able to figure him out, even though he's young. But like you're saying, I hope they can tee off against Hauser. Some of these guys have experience against him because he was, with the Brewers. But I think they can win the series and take 2 or 3. But like I was saying, Buto kind of scares me a little.
Yeah. I'm looking at Hauser. There's a couple guys that have teed off him in his career. They should tee off anyways, just because he's not good. But Nolan Gorman has a 3,333 OPS against him. So Nolan Gorman likes to hit off Hauser. That's for sure. He's got 3 at-bats.
That's great.
Goldschmidt, 34 at-bats, is 826 OPS. Donovan, only 3 at-bats, but has done well. Everyone else is either kind of mid or hasn't really faced him. Quintana, everyone's pretty mid against him from the Cardinals lineup historically, but at the same time, again, they should totally agree with you guys. They should take at least 2 or 3. It'd be great to get a series sweep finally, though, head into Detroit and kind of try to get things going there as well. Anything like big picture and really quickly, because I want to talk to John a little bit and just get to know him a little bit for you guys that are potentially interested in the Note News podcast. But what's the biggest thing you need to see? So for me, I think it's a continuation of the offense heating up. So it doesn't necessarily need to be 8 runs every game, but they need to, they can have one game where they don't get it going, because it's every offense. Even when you're good, you can have a game where you don't get it going. But I think for the most part, they need to score 4 more runs in every single game this series, or at least for the wins. And they can't be scraping these games out with the game 2-0. I really don't care how the pitching looks, honestly, right now, because it's also, it is Citi Field, so it would be pretty tough if the pitching's getting mashed in a pitcher-friendly ballpark like that. But again, it's the story for me is the offense. Let's see the offense continue to roll. John, what's the biggest thing you want to see?
Sort of like I said at the top of the episode, I just want to see them continue to put it all together and play complete games. We've seen the defense, have a big, 180 from last year, and then there you go, Note News. And then the offense putting it together, scoring 5 runs 2 out of 3 games. Hopefully they can avoid a 1-run slump. But I just want to see them put it all together and continue to play complete games as a complete team. That's what I'm looking for.
Sandy, what about you, man?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just want to see the offense look competent in this series. I'd love to see them. I want one game where we don't have to rely on Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley to win. I'll say that. So I would feel great about the series if coming out of it, we win 2 or 3, and in one of those games, we have a big win, like a true blowout win. I would like to see one
14-1 maybe.
Yeah, how about that? Start turning around that terrible run differential we have now.
Oh man, let's hope so. Okay, so all that being said, that's kind of how we're feeling about the team as we're going in. We're excited, hopeful for a big series against the Mets. But before we round it out, just want to talk to John a little bit more and get to know him. And if you've got questions in the chat, maybe we can throw a few in, but we'll have John on again in the future. And obviously they're going to be launching the podcast here soon, and you'll meet the other co-hosts here soon. But John, just tell us a little bit about where you're at in life right now and what kind of excites you about starting this podcast.
Yeah, I've talked with you all about it a little bit. I'm John Poston for all of you on the stream. I'm gonna be one of the hosts for the Note News podcast, and I've got some experience in the sports broadcasting side of things. Ape, no, I'm not gonna give it to you. But I'm excited to sort of continue telling stories about sports, whether that's here with you guys on Dealing the Cards or with my co-host Alec on Note News. Just excited to keep that train rolling and keep telling stories.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so how do you feel about the state of the Blues right now? For any of our Blues listeners or people who are interested in the Blues, I'm not a huge hockey guy, so I kind of keep it here or there. But what's your like feeling, pulse on the team right now, and what are you excited to get jumping into talking points wise as the podcast gets going?
I'm feeling, cautiously optimistic about where they are. Coming into to this year, I don't think anyone expected them to sort of be in it at the end of the year, but they were. And I think they're positioned well where they've got a young core sort of coming up and that's ready to excel and take over. And if they can make the right moves and maybe sign a few guys or trade away a bad contract or something, they can be in a position to go on a good run next year. I think this season overall, I think it was a success, which might be a little bit hard to take having just missed the playoffs. But I think that the way that the season went, where they sort of were slumping early and then turned things around and made it close at the end, I would much rather have them figure it out late than them being in it early and then falling apart. So I think cautiously optimistic is what I'd say.
Yeah. And let's get one specific question in here. Talik wants to know if you think Bannister should stay.
I don't know. I haven't made my mind up on the head coaching vacancy. I think what he was able to do with the power play and to figure that out was big and helped a lot. I know that they have a few candidates. I think they've narrowed it down to a small pool of candidates. I wouldn't say I'd be disappointed if Bannister stayed. I think, he's got experience with his team. He's got success with the team. He's got a winning record with the team. So, maybe he would be a key ingredient to a run next year.
For sure. Well, if you're listening on audio, I don't think you can find it on Spotify yet until the official episodes are posted, but you could find Note News Podcast on there. Eventually, YouTube, you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I've got it pinned on the screen right now, so you can see the name of it. It's Note News Podcast. You can find it in the live stream chat. Go subscribe so you can get the episodes as they start coming out soon with John and Alec. And you can also let me find that comment again. And you can follow John on Twitter if you want his takes and all that of John Poston213. You can find that over on Twitter. John, really excited for you to get that podcast started soon here. We'll continue to update our listeners as that gets going. So if you're looking for Blues content, honestly, it feels like there's a lot of Cardinals podcasts out there. There's a lot of other Cardinals content that Sandy, myself, and John could recommend you to, but there's not a lot of good Blues stuff out there. So really excited for John, and you'll meet Alex soon to get that rolling. As always, we're super thankful for you listening. If this is your first time tuning in, I would love for you to subscribe to the Cards podcast, like the video, share, helps the channel out a ton. We're really excited about just what's coming content-wise over here in a Note News Podcast, and we're hopefully excited to see the offense getting rolling here soon. We'll be live again on Sunday, but until next time, thanks for joining us.